meeting to order, because we can go to closed session, and then when Councilwoman uh, Avalos shows up, we just catch up. Yeah. Okay, calling the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hurtado,
Present.
Vice Mayor Davila,
Present.
Councilmember Avalos is not here yet. Councilmember Barron,
Present.
Councilmember Rios, City Treasurer De La Paz is not here yet. City Manager Houston,
Present.
City Attorney Salinas, not yet. Meeting compensation disclosure pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, disclosure of compensation for meeting attendance by city council members is $790 monthly, regardless of the amount of meetings.
Okay, so item number one. Oh, we got two items, right? Closed session.
Just,
And let the
Just for the
record
record.
reflect that our treasurer has shown up at 5:01 and 15 seconds.
thank you. Item
Thank you,
number
Ms.
one.
Mayor.
Item number one, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency representation is Rob Houston, City Manager. Employer organizations are Southgate PMMA, Southgate MEA. Item two, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9C. One potential case. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Let me open it up to the audience. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak on these items, please step forward. Seeing no one step forward, we'll go into closed session. We had a meeting at 5 dealing with something completely different. And when we get started with that meeting, we'll give a report on that. Anybody can comment on that. We'll close that meeting, and then we'll start the regular meeting. Translation to Spanish. There's headsets in the back. Si alguien ocupa traducción, hay audífonos atrás y vamos a tener traducción. Okay, we're back from closed session. Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The city council met in closed session to discuss two items. Item number one on the agenda was a conference with the city's labor negotiators, Rob Houston, and the employee associations that were discussed in closed session were the Southgate PMMA and the Southgate MEA. There was a staff presentation with regard to ongoing labor negotiations. However, there's no reportable action that was had there. Item number two, conference of legal counsel involving anticipated litigation. The city council considered a case of potential threatened litigation against the city. Upon completion of that presentation, there's no reportable action discussed that came out of closed session on that item. With that, Mr. Mayor, that completes my report.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on those two items? Please step forward, state your name. And by the way, that's just a formality to ask. You don't have to say.
All right, Mario Dominguez Jr., resident of Southgate. All right, Mr. Salinas, you know what I'm going to say. What is this? Another question mark here of this case. I don't know what it is. It doesn't give any indication. So what can you tell us about this? That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Hang on, let me see if there's anybody else. Anybody else? Me here or the gentleman? Oh, he just wants to know more information on what was discussed in closed session.
I think he's talking about me.
Oh, him. Gotcha. Okay. Go ahead, Ro.
All right, testing, 1, 2, 3. I think I can be heard now.
Yeah.
In response to the question, the city council has the ability to have discussions in closed session to discuss potential cases that have not yet been filed that are considered potential threatened litigation. In closed session, the city council had such an instance in which it discussed potential threatened litigation, and we advised the council about that. Upon presenting that to the council, there's no reportable action. There's no vote that was taken in response to that report by the city council. Thank you.
Okay, see no one else step forward. I'm going to close the audience portion. Did we get any emails on those two items?
No, Mayor.
Okay, then I'm gonna close.
Mr.
it.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
just for the record to reflect that I am present.
Yeah, we gave her that
you.
information. Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn that meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion and second. Seeing no objection, that meeting is closed. Say when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. A roll call, please.
Mayor Hurtado,
Present.
Vice Mayor Davila. Present. Councilmember Avalos,
Present.
Councilmember Barron,
Present.
Councilmember Rios, City Treasurer De La Paz,
Present.
City Manager Houston,
Present.
City Attorney Salinas.
I'm present. Also present with me is Terry Montoya, a lawyer with our firm. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have,
Meeting compensation disclosure.
Yes.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, disclosure of compensation for meeting attendance by city council members is $790 monthly, regardless of the amount of meetings.
thank you. Open session agenda, item number 1.
The city council will receive a presentation to discuss industrial land use throughout the city of Southgate. The public is invited to attend and participate as it impacts and benefits the industrial land use and discussed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Houston?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So back some time ago on May 28th at the council meeting, there was a discussion with the city council, and they asked to explore alternatives to the current 15,000 square foot cap that is on warehouse use in the city, and further to that, look at industrial uses in the city. So from that discussion and that request, really it's looking at, should the city change their industrial land use policy? And if the answer is yes, what should that new policy look like? And it's a complicated and important journey for the community. And so we look to bring in some assistance in the form of a consulting group that has expertise in this area. And so we engaged Cosmont Consultant Group, who's well regarded in the area. And they are going to give us an overview through a study in the presentation you'll see tonight of what other cities have done to manage industrial development in their jurisdictions. And we will understand that there's certainly benefits and impacts that can come from industrial land use. So we'll get guidance from them. And to speak on behalf of the Cosmont Company is their president, Ken Hira, and he'll be speaking now. You can come up and give us the presentation. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's good to be back. We've done a lot of work in the city of Southgate over the years and appreciate the opportunity to kind of do this high-level industrial land use study. This is phase 1 of an assignment. I'm Ken Hira, president of Cosmont Companies, and I have a colleague here, Ryan Aubrey, and then I've got another colleague just listening in. But we've done a research piece that meant to explore what other cities are doing necessarily with respect to industrial and new development. And so I'll walk through that. I won't read through every slide. I'm trying to advance this thing. Hang on one second. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you've had the opportunity, council members, to take a look at this, but will be available obviously for questions. But partly because of the city's key location, near the ports and LA, Long Beach, and the rise of e-commerce, there is pretty high industrial demand in the city. There is a zoning code that you have in place that restricts certain areas to 15,000 square feet. Landowners and developers are really looking to pursue potential distribution and warehouse, and your city is centrally located. That defines it as a good location for industrial. There are some parcels that are suited for redevelopment. There are some parcels that are also blighted, say, and underutilized. So there are good opportunities for redevelopment, and landowners and developers and businesses are trying to find ways to sort of maximize those parcels. Industrial development with warehouses can create opportunities and can create jobs for cities. At the same time, they can create negative impact. And that's been one of the biggest issues for a lot of communities these days as they look at traffic impacts and other environmental impacts for that matter. It's our understanding that City Council wanted to get a better understanding of the different development alternatives And so Cosmont Companies was hired to help research. It was really a research assignment. And we took a look at a lot of different cities. I won't say that that's a comprehensive list per se of every city that has fees related to industrial, but we tried to take a good sample that gives you all some guidance on potential next steps. Our study focused on identifying the industrial areas within the city of Southgate, and we looked at some of the truck trips. We're not an engineering firm, we don't do traffic, but we do economics. And so we just wanted to understand the impact of some of those truck trip routes. We reviewed areas or buckets of opportunities for revenue collection to offset impacts from industrial uses. We gathered case studies that help support some of the positions here. And then we have some possible policy suggestions for you all for discussion and deliberation, and then some next steps to discuss. It's important to understand that, a big issue, of course, is traffic concerning the community, and there are pinch points within the city, right? There's a truck route map that I'll just show quickly, but Firestone, Atlantic, the 710 freeway, Garfield, et cetera. And those traffic volumes are pretty significant today. So our study, along with, we think, a focused traffic analysis, will help you all evaluate, zoning code policies and decisions that you all have to make. Here's just a high level picture of the traffic routes, truck routes, which are in the green, and then some of the intersections that are impacted. We obviously reviewed your zoning code that really identified different allowed land uses in different urban mixed use parts of the city, as well as commercial industrial. And there's some specifics about where you cannot build any more than 15,000 feet, as mentioned, along street frontage, and they would have to be a rear use. Planning commissioners, city council members at the time, back in 2015, clearly had the concern about the proliferation of large warehouses. So in our research, we did a variety of things. We interviewed folks from NAOP, which is an industry group that has a lot of influence within the industrial and office industry. We talked to some local brokers. We talked to land use attorneys to try to get a perspective. The idea of a development impact fee, what becomes important to help define it, is frankly a nexus study, and that's a technical study using technical resources to identify certain trips. That those metrics tend to be based on number of employees per 1,000 square feet, and they have a range of per square foot that makes sense to charge from a city's perspective. Our research has found that a lot of cities use the notion of a conditional use permit and or a development agreement to help define the offset or cost that makes sense for a city with some flexibility based on the impacts that it has for warehouses. Our study, found that the concern, of course, based on e-commerce and the distribution facilities, again, are creating a lot of traffic at the same time. Some of these facilities can actually be regional headquarters with job creation, R&D, manufacturing, business to business. Some of them do offer high-paying jobs and create a significant amount of tax revenue. So there's considerations on both sides of the equation. In our methodologies, we came up with 3 areas for the city to consider to basically create a revenue source to offset industrial impact. Number 1 is fees. Number 2 is taxes. And number 3 is public benefit, which tends to be more of a negotiated bucket, if you will. So from a fee perspective, it's about cost recovery and sort of a fair share of the increased infrastructure and public facility costs. That would require this idea of commissioning a nexus study to determine the traffic volumes and a range of warehouse uses to calculate impact fees that go to offset the physical impacts on your city. There's lots of examples of those, Monrovia, Burbank, Hayward, Clovis, Fontana, et cetera. And we've provided you all with some numbers, some technical numbers and ranges that may be reasonable to charge industrial development or charge industrial redevelopment. The second area is an area that's specifically taxes, and those taxes would require a vote of the people. And there's a whole variety of types of taxes that can be used. Utility, parcel tax, business license, what's called CFD, a community facilities district, and then another tool that we've used called sales tax assessment revenue. We actually used that in a developer negotiation where it was like an in lieu sales tax revenue calculation. Examples there are El Segundo, Vernon, Carson, San Bernardino, and Jurupa Valley, which is an area where Cosmont worked to negotiate a development agreement. Public benefits through development agreements. You see some X's and Y's because we're still trying to put placeholders in the threshold of how large a development would be in order for you all to trigger certain negotiations for development agreements and exact certain fees, if you will. But one notion would be that you establish a baseline benefit payment that would come with industrial projects. And examples there include Vernon, Jurupa Valley, San Bernardino, and Moreno Valley. In the case of Moreno Valley, there's a 40 million square foot project called World Logistics Center. And we were also involved in helping negotiate a development agreement there in order to get community benefits. Really, a lot of that was driven by the job creation that would come. So, and that is to say, when job creation is important to a community, we've just shown this sort of visual graphic that says a lot of times there's an inverse relationship between, the job creation and necessarily the truck trips. A transloading facility is going to have less jobs theoretically. Manufacturing, office, research is going to have more jobs, likely less truck trips. So there's an inverse relationship there, and that can help define some of the land uses that you all would evaluate. We have several examples, municipal industrial policy references, and there's descriptions and case studies for each and every one of these in our homework. So Fontana, Vernon, San Bernardino County, Carson, Redlands, Jurupa Valley, Moreno Valley, Pomona, Burbank, and then we've done some work in the Central Valley, and we did a lot of work for the city of Clovis recently. That was basically a development impact fee analysis for them. So I won't go through each of these necessarily. If there's questions, we're obviously available, but each one of these have a unique set of circumstances. I mean, even if you look at Fontana, there are some lawsuits associated with how warehouse projects got developed. In Vernon, which is pretty close here, there's been a lot of work done, including some policies and a municipal code. San Bernardino County, Carson, which we just did some recent research on that includes a development impact fee for industrial, with certain thresholds. Jurupa Valley, as I mentioned, Moreno Valley also, I mentioned it, and Burbank, we've also done some homework. So I wanted to kind of spend a minute on Clovis just because the way Clovis looked at their development impact fee calculations was actually driven by zones or districts, because as areas within the city of Clovis had more need for infrastructure, there was a higher fee. Now, this is a more suburbanized environment with a lot of growth, residential, industrial, et cetera. You're certainly more of an infill location, but it could be some consideration for different parts of your community that end up with slightly different fee structures necessarily based on certain impacts. The last table here is a summary of all three of those buckets: impact fees, annual taxes, and public benefit for each of those cities, as well as the more urbanized areas, LA, versus the more suburban and rural areas. And you'll notice the ranges of costs.
Why you see us whispering is because the last two, this one, the last one.
Yeah.
It's not in our documents here, and
Oh.
it's not online either.
Apologize. Yeah, I don't know why.
We're having a difficult time.
Sorry. We sent the final document, so hopefully these things,
That's okay. He's gonna move through.
yeah. And I can slow down because I was assuming you had benefit of some of this review.
Everything that you've done so far is good, except the last two. We don't have the last
Okay.
data.
In fairness, I'll come back to this idea of Clovis, the mapping of this more suburban and rural environment, and the fee calculations were driven by where there was more or less infrastructure. So where there was less infrastructure, obviously, you had a much higher calculation of fees. And you can see in this example, Area 1, for example, had a pretty high retail fee, a pretty high office fee, if you will, and a higher industrial fee. In the case of Area 5 in Clovis, up in Fresno County, you can see those rates came down a lot. Obviously, they had more infrastructure. There were more mature environments. So if you looked at your city, there could be a way potentially to take a look at where there's more need and where there's less need, and then carve it up in a way where there's fees that are allocated to certain geo areas. And this go, yeah. This one would be important in so much as it's meant to summarize the impact fees, the taxes, and the public benefits. Councilman, did you have a question?
Yes, if we can just have an example of what a transloading business is or logistics shipping.
Yeah.
That way, our residents can envision what that would look like.
Sure. The notion of a transloading is trucks are literally coming in. There's very few jobs that are associated with it. And it's like a truck transfer station, if you will. So it's just bring it in, unload, take it out. So it tends to be an area where there's lower jobs, right? And there's just a function that gets executed, which is taking goods from one truck to another and then a redistribution of those goods. So that's the one end of that spectrum. And that was the idea juxtaposed to a high manufacturing use where you would have a lot of jobs, obviously. And, manufacturing has been challenged locally. You see a lot more distribution, a lot more warehousing, a lot more e-commerce, partly because of just the proliferation of, how retail goods have been passing back and forth. I mean, I could spend time on other asset classes and it's almost worth it because we did the Azalea project for you all years and years and years ago, Councilwoman Davila. And that was a location where you had a pipe manufacturing plant, Amaron, at a corner that was a perfect retail center. But you can't create a retail center unless that pipe manufacturing plant goes out of business or leaves. So Atlantic and Firestone became the hard 100% corner for retail. And so, that trade-off for what you got as a result of it economically made a huge difference. Not every site within your city is going to be suited for that kind of transition. And so where there's more jobs, that might be more of a priority. Obviously, Azalea turned out to be a very high sales tax revenue economic boon for the city, as well as obviously serving your community in a big way because there was the absence of that land use. So I just want to touch on that for a second because these asset classes make a difference. Why is there incredible industrial demand? I can tell you there's not incredible office demand, okay? Because the office business and the office industry has changed dramatically as catalyzed by the pandemic and as catalyzed by the different things we do under our rooftops. Because again, another little bit of a divergence from this topic, but residential has been just a place where people lived. Well, it started to become a place where people shopped, and now it's a place where people work. And as that happens, residential becomes so critical to your economy. And as we look at all land uses, hotel, retail, office, industrial, and residential, they all have different economic impacts to a community. And to be honest with you, at Cosmont, we talk a lot about how residential has a positive economic impact because of those activities that I mentioned. And frankly, so can industrial. But it has to have the right mitigation. So that's the difference for that asset class. Anyways, as to this fee schedule, it's a summary and it provides some ranges. If you look at Burbank and its impact fees, it's $7.47 a foot. That's big. That's very different from Carson at $2.20 a foot and different from the other rural environments like Fontana at $5 a foot. So this is meant to summarize some of the data that we had in the previous slides. I apologize if you didn't get that in your packets. I do want to spend a minute here on policy suggestions, potential policy suggestions, and then there's some next steps and I can wrap up. So kind of in summary and really the notion of what next steps can be. Number one, there's going to need to be some more due diligence, if you will, some more market evaluation, and certainly some deliberation on your part. But number one would be the city commissioning a traffic or road capacity study to really help define the impacts and the costs and the capital investment that then need to be mitigated. And this is where this nexus study comes into play to really define a development impact fee. It could range from $5 to $10 a square foot. That range has got to be narrowed down further, but we wanted to provide a range. Secondly, based on public works and a maintenance assessment from a tax perspective, the city could establish a business tax or a community facilities district tax. Hard to say what the range is, 25 to 35 cents a square foot, but it's just a placeholder to indicate that these are ways to help mitigate and offset costs as a function of a public works assessment. The third is the area of a development agreement. It's a little harder to predict what the outcome of a development agreement is going to be if you get into a negotiation with a developer. But you can have policies that set parameters. A DA is going to be required for projects greater than X amount of square feet. Is it 50,000 feet? Is it 100,000 feet? You know, that can range as we fine tune this. The range of community benefits could be stated in a policy for that matter. You could have a baseline. It could be $4 to $6 a foot. You know, what has to happen when a developer comes in and either looks at a property to acquire or has an asset is they run a pro forma. And the income side of the equation is the rents they're going to get or the sales that they're going to get. And the cost side of the equation includes the cost of construction, which is very high right now, and, you know, fees and soft costs, et cetera. And that makes their yield. And any developer is going to have to make a commensurate yield. It's a high risk business that they're in. But when they understand a fee schedule that is pretty defined, at least they can run their pro forma and they can say, all right, I know what my numbers are going to be. And that should essentially and effectively create the result of what the land's worth. So if you were going to go buy a piece of property, you'd want to run that pro forma first. That's how developers calculate really what a property is worth. And obviously the business demand is a big part of that. You know, who wants to be in the city, who wants to operate here, and what they're going to do. So the development agreements are a negotiating tool that end up with community benefits, and they can increase, frankly, if you set a baseline based on certain circumstances. We put an example down here, a 200,000 square foot warehouse could result in an upfront fee. And if based on the per foot calculation that makes sense for you all, it could be $2 to $4 million. And then there could also be an ongoing revenue stream. At the end of the day, these fees to offset and mitigate the impacts to your community, they need to be beneficial to you all so that those costs are recovered, if you will, and your community benefits from it, obviously. And they need to then also make sure that they don't tip the scale for the developer who has to run their pro forma. And if those deals don't work, then they don't build. And if taxes are important or jobs are important, then we won't get those until that pro forma has a feasibility to it. Right now, feasibility of development is pretty low. And the reason is costs are high, interest costs are high. So we're challenged right now by new development, quite frankly. Some potential next steps, you know, if the city wanted to pursue a business tax, which requires a vote, that's got to go on a ballot, or do a nexus study for a DIF calculation, development impact fee calc. If the city wants the land use change, and that's something that's important to you all, you know, that would conduct probably an environmental review, needless to say. And then the council would also identify some preferred industrial uses and types of uses. We talk about transloading versus job creation. You can put that on a scale and you can say, hey, this is more important to us. High paying jobs or, you know, tax revenue generating uses. There are sales tax that can come out of certain industrial uses when they're point of sale or if they're e-commerce driven. So that can be part of your sliding scale. And, timeframes here are, it's up to you all to, how long things want to take. It's your call on making policy decisions. And then we know that these nexus studies and impact fee analyses, they do take some time. So on that note, again, we were part of sort of a phase 1 data gathering exercise. Our effort for you all would potentially include a phase 2, but that's going to be at your direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you have additional comments to make at this time?
No, I think back to you.
Okay, then let me open this up to the audience, and then we'll bring it back to us. If anybody in the audience wishes to address us on this item, please step forward, and if you'd like to, step over to the side. Also, I know that we're going to have emails read later on, so if you made a comment, so the email won't be read. It's either, got it.
All right, so wait a second. So am I commenting on this, or is there going to be a second public comment, or is this it?
This is it.
Is it? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So Mario Dominguez Jr., resident of Southgate. All right. So the idea that I want to pitch to council members, I like coming up with ideas and solutions. Take the cap for the square footage for our buildings, make it 250,000 square feet, for these lots and, these properties that want to develop all these, buildings and warehouses, make it 250,000 square feet. And the reason why I came up with this number is because, that Patata Street development, what was previously there, because now it's just bulldozed over, it was 240,000. Well, why don't we just go back to that and make that the standard and just bump it up to 250,000 square feet? So that's my pitch to the council members. The other thing is I want a provision in the ordinance that allows, let's say, a developer like these Patata Street folks with the Anheuser-Busch people, they can still have the freedom to present their project to the planning commission, to the city council. So that way, I want our city to have to not be restricted to consider projects that go over 250,000 square feet, so that the city council and the planning commission can have special consideration for projects that go over. And the other thing that I want to hit on is, last year we had the people from Amazon to address the Rio location that they have, and how the residents and some of the businesses weren't happy with the traffic coming in and off. But then the Amazon people said that they were going to build a location south of their location on Rio to supplement and to offset the traffic and the flow of vehicles going onto Rio. So I want an update. What is the status of that location? They said they were going to get it done by March or April. So now we're in August. We're 8 months deep into 2024. When are they going to get that done? So, and here, the reason why I bring this up is, if you can't manage the Amazon people, then how the fuck are you going to manage Anheuser-Busch and their project that they want to bring in? I mean, this thing is going to dwarf what Amazon has. So I'd like an update on that. And the other thing is, we have kids that are 6, 7, and 8 years old. I don't want them to be scratching their heads 20 years from now, wondering, how did we get to this place? How is it that we have these big jumbo-sized buildings? We didn't have them when we were kids growing up. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. I don't know what Ms. Oguida and her team are going to suggest and recommend, but you have advisors. Listen to your advisors. This is why you have them. All right, that's all I have.
And let me just remind everyone, we're talking here about the presentation. We don't have a project in front of us at this time. That may come later, but that's not here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, council and folks present. My name is Liz Ruiz. I am one of the planning commissioners, and I'm also a resident of Southgate since 2006. I've been locally active since I was a teenager, and am an environmental scientist. And so I had sent an email earlier that I'll try to kind of go through with the time allotted. Some of the issues I had with today's meeting was that it's actually happening at the same time as the EPA is having a report related to the Exide battery recycling plant cleanup in Southeast LA, just north of us. And so my concern is that a lot of the folks that would be interested in this topic wouldn't, aren't able to make it because of that. And I'm also kind of disappointed in the outreach that was done for this meeting. I didn't think it was very specific to the topic. And I didn't check the packet on the website agenda, but when I did click on the email for the presentation, it didn't come up. Only the announcement for the meeting came up. So I don't know if that was supposed to happen or not. But that I feel like really impacted some of the attendance from our community members concerned with the environment. And so with that, that's one of the issues I have with this, the proposal that was done on May 28th during item number 3. And in particular, that option for just getting rid of the minimum 15,000 square feet. And my concern comes through just, the amount of traffic that's going to be created, the amount of pollution that's going to come from that, the use within some of the areas that are proposed for the zone change. I feel like it's just not compatible with warehouse use. I don't think the streets are wide enough. I think that, trucks are bound to circle around those areas. And I know you guys read the concerns from the city of Cudahy around the Patata Street proposed development, redevelopment. And so because of that, because of the increase in truck traffic, because of the typical low-paying jobs that come with warehouse use, I really do want to push you guys to really work on doing some sort of economic development before even considering, locking in these areas for warehouse use. I think there could be a better use. I think, we can have a better relationship with the global economy and really, challenge ourselves to bring some of that business in. The Alameda corridor was put to maximize industrial use in that area, and it hasn't been utilized to its potential. There's other uses like mixed commercial residential that I think can be better used, with proper cleanup of some of these industrial properties.
Can you wrap it up in 10 seconds?
Yeah, and so so I really do want to, ask and challenge you guys to really consider this, just having this carte blanche proposal for industrial warehouse use. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves. Next speaker, please.
Andrea Paulino, Hollydale. I think expanding the warehouse sizes is a good idea. Our city's a dinosaur. Businesses don't want to come here because of the rules that we have now, restricting size. Buildings are old, dilapidated. Nobody wants them. Too small, not safe. Something has to change. If we want to be viable and we want to be competitive, something has to change. And it's not going to happen if we keep these caps on sizes of stuff. Everybody wants to talk about the traffic and the pollution and the parking and all this stuff, but nobody stops to think about when they're building an ADU, what that's doing to our traffic, what's that doing to the pollution, what that's doing to our city, our neighborhoods. We need to bring in cleaner businesses. If somebody's willing to come here and say, I want to use solar, I want to use electric, I want to keep my business under a roof, so there's not going to be a bunch of trucks and noise and everything visible, then we should give them a chance. Just, we've become unfriendly to people. This is it. These are rules. This is what we have. And if you don't like it, then go to another city. Everybody complains about nothing good comes to Southgate. Why would they want to? When we're so closed-minded about what can be built here. That's really about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Next speaker, please.
Hello there, Edward DeWitt, General Veneer Manufacturing Company. My family has owned a business in Southgate for many, many years, and I wanted to thank the council and the city manager for having this study conducted, because I think it's important to look at these issues, and I believe it is time to kind of reassess some of these rules on industrial property. As industrial landlords in the community, we are aware that there's a Southgate discount when we talk to commercial brokers. Well, if the building's in Southgate, it's worth less, per square foot or however you measure it, than in other surrounding communities. And that's in large part due to the demand for industrial property and where it comes from. And I think it's important to do these studies because there are many issues on both sides as far as the traffic and the costs associated to this community, to the city. And industrial property typically doesn't generate the sales tax that the city would like to see. But some areas are just not well suited for sales tax generating businesses. And so there needs to be a compromise. So I appreciate the study being done, and I hope this issue continues so that there can be some compromise, because I think in the long run, there is a lot of older industrial property and it's going to have to be developed in some way. And hopefully there's a win-win scenario for the whole community. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak my mind. I'm a resident for over 30 years here in Southgate, and I just want to express my opposition to this way to use the space that we have. I think we should use it in a better way to bring out, Southgate to a better, place to live, instead of another, city where it's full of factories and, you got roofing companies, and I don't think we need any more of that. We talk about beautification and beautify the city. I don't think this is going to beautify the city in any way. Yeah, it might bring money, but I'd rather live with my family really comfortable with less traffic and, more, city to live, grow kids and everything. I feel sorry for the younger people. My kids are growing up, but like somebody said, 20 years from now, I think this is a bad idea. Why don't we use it, do some, I don't know. There's plenty of uses that could help really, really nice to the city, instead of bringing more trucks and, traffic and pollution or whatever, and I just thank you guys for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. He doesn't have to.
Good evening, Council. Richard Lute, IRS Demo, 8990 Atlantic. Thank you guys for the study. Thank you for having the meeting. One of the things, we've been in Southgate for 22 years, and we have always enjoyed the fact that while we don't always get what we want, at least we have an explanation and the ability to talk to you, and that's invaluable. I wanted to point out that, for me, I think we need to stick with the facts on this. I think we have to get away from the feelings and the fears, and we have to stick with the facts. Right now, every single zoning opportunity for warehousing requires a CUP. You need that conditional use permit. So theoretically, you could remove all caps on any sizes of any warehouse and still never approve a warehouse in the city. You have that ability. And everybody talks about traffic and pollution, and those are very real concerns. But something else to keep in mind, if we get rid of some of the older buildings, which are still standing because they can't tear them down to build new warehouse. But if we get rid of those buildings, the way the California Building Code has changed, we get new green buildings, energy efficient, water efficient. We're helping the city. And when it comes to traffic, One of the things I think a lot of the public doesn't realize because they've never had to pull a CUP, but when you pull a CUP, you trigger CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, just by pulling that CUP, which means that any project, no matter the size, has to go through the Environmental Quality Act to make sure that it is not causing any damage. And I haven't heard anybody mention that. The fact that there are protections for the city within existing law. So again, to me, the logical thing, we don't need a limit on warehouse size. That's going to be predicated by the size of the property, the use of the owner, and CEQA and the conditional use permit. You can get rid of that cap and still have 100% control of every project that comes through here. So the example I like to use, if Habitat for Humanity wanted to come in here with your 15,000 square foot cap, if they wanted to come in and build a 100,000 square foot warehouse to have one of their restores to sell things to your residents, you couldn't even look at it because you have a cap there. So again, not all warehousing is bad. And with the CUP and with CEQA, even if you eliminate that cap, the city loses zero control over what you allow in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rene Rios. I'm a longtime resident, and I grew up in this city. And yes, we do need more businesses, right? More employment, but at what cost to our city? You know, we already have all these ADUs, all these apartment buildings that are converting their garages into ADUs. What does that do to our parking situation? Besides the traffic situation, besides warehouses like Amazon bringing more traffic into us, what does that do to our city as far as us that live here, that we're constantly have to fight for parking situation? But you guys are quick to open a lot more storage units, you know, after all these ADUs came up, more storage units popped up in Southgate, you know. You allowed for those types of warehouses, you know. That's not beneficial to us as residents, you know. So my question again is like, what are you guys doing for us that live here, have lived here for so long? You know, it's just about money. I feel like ADUs are going to cause a lot more problems in the long run, you know, parking situations. Now you guys are not, I live in California. I just recently found out the zoning changed on how you can build. If we want to remodel our house, if we want to build above our house, they're asking us to build to the curb now. You guys want to make California into like a commercial zone. It's commercial and residential. It was at one point. I don't know if it still is, but why would you want to develop California up into the sidewalk to bring businesses when there's never, all the businesses that have been there, the buildings had been there for years, decades. They don't produce anything. All these little buildings have been converted into homes now, you know? Why are you trying to bring more businesses when we don't even have businesses in our city? Look at Tweety. Tweety was a prime. When I was growing up, that was it, you know? There were so many mom and pop places that are gone now. You know, we have all these empty buildings and we have all these discount stores that are, you know, a dime a dozen. They're not bringing no kind of revenue to our city. You know, this city can be, I hate to say the word great again, you know, let's make it great again, but it can be a great place again. There's a lot of people that grow up here and want to come back here, but for what? You know, for this congestion, for this high taxes that we have, same type of businesses that everybody else has, Walmarts, and it's all the same. We lost our charm. We lost our all-American city that we once were. So, you know, we got to, again, I go back to the parking situation because it's a problem, you know, and people are fighting to, as soon as a street sweeper passes, they're already parking, you know, come on. And you're going to continue to let people build ADUs and not allow us to build above our homes to make it more prosperous. A property value is going to increase if you maintain that garage and you build above your garage.
See if you could wrap it up in the next 10
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Cataldo. I was a former business owner in the city of Southgate. I am a practicing architect, and many of the buildings that you see in Southern California have my name associated with it. I've probably designed 4,000 or 5,000 buildings. A lot of them are industrial. And I want to thank the council for bringing on Cosmont. I know Cosmont very well. I've worked with their firm in the past. I was involved with the city of Southgate previously. I was on a code compliance committee. There's a few things I want to point out and a few things that I think are important to note. With manufacturing, the projects that we are experiencing right now, which involve manufacturing, involve a lot of automation, and that's because of the cost of labor. Manufacturing facilities don't have the quantity of people that they used to have. They have machines. That should go into your analysis in terms of how you factor the equivalent of a manufacturing facility versus a distribution facility. I think that's an important note. We are going to present a project next week to the city. It's going to be a manufacturing project. It's going to be very highly automated. That's one point I wanted to make. The other point I want to make is in regards to the CUP and the process thereof. When developers put projects together, it's not just about the money, it's about the time it takes to get a project approved. As much as we say CEQA protects and CEQA enables us to do what we want to do, CEQA creates a huge, not impediment, but it takes a lot of time. A lot of consultants get involved. It takes a lot more work to deal with CEQA, to deal with the CUP. There's nothing wrong with that if it's done expeditiously. And one suggestion, if the city of Southgate wants to shine as a better city, my suggestion would be keep the CUP permit in place, but let's move it fast. People will appreciate that. As far as developers go, they don't care about the money. They'll pay whatever the fees are. I've seen Carson, developers pay the excess fees in Carson. In most of these other cities that I've built buildings in, the city, the
You
developers.
need to wrap this up in about 10 seconds, please.
Yes, they don't mind paying the fee. What they don't like is the time associated with all of the effort that goes into it. So my suggestion is, please expedite the time. But thank you for hiring Cosmont, and I look forward to being part of Southgate and improving the city.
Thank you for your comment, please. Thank you. Okay, see no one else step forward. I'm going to close the audience portion. Madam City Clerk, we have some emails, and we've had. Okay. Yeah. So that I don't miss calling on you, if you are going to speak, I would appreciate if you can line up. That way I'll know not to close the audience portion. Come on. Either one, they both work. Just hit the button so that it's green.
Okay, it's green. When this meeting was presented, we got excuse me? Johnny Lozano. When this meeting was presented to me, I'm sorry to get all everybody's attention here, but I had no idea what was going to be presented. Was it going to be a casino? Was it going to be a different thing? But it entails all the industrial tracts that are available, right? But have you decided already what you wanted to do with your redevelopment? Because everybody's assuming that you're doing a warehouse. Is that true? That's my question to you.
So once you finish your 3 minutes,
are you
we'll
already,
answer.
okay. Is it already decided that you're going to open you're looking into a warehouse type of redevelopment? There's no answer on your part?
Yeah, so once you finish your 3 minutes, all your questions will be answered at the end after everybody speaks.
Okay, well, that's.
And we don't get into a back and forth, that's why.
Oh, okay, good. You said on May 28th or something, whatever day it was, this idea was to get this problem or you wanted a solution for all the different, all the vacant spots that you have as far as commercial area or lots. You have Mr. Kenneth from Rossmont Company. Have you checked with other companies to for this as research goes by to see if this is the best thing to do? So those are the things that came to my mind. I'm sorry to bring the last one guy here, but I just didn't know what was going on, and it seemed like everybody else does. I have to have that clarified. Okay?
Will do.
3 minutes? Okay, 1 more to go, but that's it.
You have a few more seconds, but you're welcome. Okay, now, see, the reason I can get mad at her, she's like family to me. So go ahead and finish it off.
Giovanna Laborin, Planning Commissioner as well, the current Vice Chair. So it seems like listening to everyone, I sat there in the Planning Commission when everything was presented, and it seemed that our community and a lot of people are being misled. Misinformation. This is not about one project. This is about a general thing in our city. So for example, I discussed this with a few people that were against it, and I said, so a lot of people say in the community they wish they had a Costco. Guess what? We can't have one right now because of the footage. So the warehouse, constantly saying warehouse, is misleading for the people that don't understand construction or the square footage. I've been in construction, I'm gonna say my age, who cares? 47 years old, I'm 47 years old. 25 years of my life, I've been in construction. I dealt with the city of Long Beach. So I worked for a subcontractor as well as a GC, which is a general contractor here in the state of California, as well as in the state of Nevada. Dealing with the cities, that's why there's CUPs. We have to follow the rules that each city has, but they don't have a footage. We just have to follow, and that's why they have CUPs in place. And having to deal with Long Beach, which I did, I was part of the project of the ports, the library, the court, Disneyland, which was that's in Anaheim, with the Star Wars. I always had to deal with cities when it came to permits and conditional uses and all that stuff. And I've came across that here in our city, we're not business friendly. We have too much old school stuff. Like if Mr. DeWitt, which is somebody I've been wanting to talk to for a long time, if they want to remodel any of their buildings that they currently have here that have been here for how many decades? I remember these buildings since I was in middle school and stuff. If they want to remodel, what's going to happen? They can't. If they want to upgrade, they want to make it look better, for our city to look better, the footage causes a problem. IRS has quite an extensive amount of property. They want to do something, they're blocked. So even the businesses we currently have here that have already over that footage, they can't. And that's what needs to be explained to our community, what this means, actual means, and stop thinking that we're trying to bring all these warehouses and stop focusing and misleading people that it's only because of Anheuser-Busch as well. Because the city of Cudahy have came up here and have said, we're just against it. Well, are you for the safety of your city as well? Because on Patata, I filed a lot of complaints because of the safety of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I am really closing the audience portion. For real this time. I mean it. Okay, emails, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few emails. I will start with the first one that I received from Mr. Hector De La Torre. He states, Southgate council members, as a lifelong Southgate resident, I am very concerned about any action by the city to undo the city of Southgate's 2015 zoning code prohibiting new industrial warehousing development over 15,000 square feet. There is a reason why council members Henry Gonzalez, Bill DeWitt, and I pushed for a previous version of this restriction. It is a waste of limited quality industrial space in the city. As a chart in your report shows, there is a clear difference between jobs and truck traffic in any warehousing and operation, as large buildings are staffed with very few workers, yet generate very high traffic. As Henry Gonzalez would say, the city's focus should be on jobs. And we agreed. The city should only prioritize manufacturing and other job creations. At the same time, Southgate is an AB 617 community air protection program, which are the 19 most underdeserved and polluted communities in California, with diesel accounting over 70% of the carcinogen effect of air pollution. Adding thousands of truck trips to an already congested goods movement corridor will only harm the health of Southgate residents. In fact, Southgate Coast Air Quality Management District adopted an indirect source specifically for truck magnet warehousing because of the health effects and these large warehouses. I could give many more reasons for opposing any change to the existing zone code, and I am available to discuss. Thank you, Hector De La Torre. I have another one from Ms. Norma Cardenas Frank, who is a Southgate resident. She states, "Good evening, council. I am concerned about increasing warehousing uses in our small city. The existing Amazon warehouse on rail already causes significant traffic issues with trucks congesting Firestone Rail and Atlantic Avenue, both day and night. Expanding with this type of use would worsen traffic, pollution, noise, and road damage, negatively impacting the quality of life. The Planning Commission wisely decided not to amend the zoning code to allow more industrial square footage. I urge the City Council to uphold their decision to prevent further detriment of our community. Supporting the current zoning restrictions aligns with the Council's vision to enhance our quality of life. Thank you for your time." I also received one from Cynthia Seipert, and she states this is not Jennifer Seipert, it's Cynthia Seipert. "Good evening, Council. I'm concerned about the 15,000 square foot limit on warehouses and how it became policy without much notice. As a longtime resident, I believe arbitrary limits like this one can unnecessarily restrict business development. Even small businesses can impact traffic, so the building size alone isn't the issue. Our city needs businesses that create local jobs. I urge the council to reconsider the limit or set one based on lot size, similar to home size regulations. Traffic and environmental impacts should be assessed based on specific business proposals, not general limits. Thank you for your consideration." And I have one last one from Ms. Jasenia Martinez. She specifically asked questions to Cosmont, and then she specifically asked questions to the City Council. These 4 questions are for Cosmont. Number 1 is NAIOP is a PAC supporting industrial landowners. Did your research include input from nonpartisan groups to ensure a balanced perspective? Number 2, the summary comparison is missing from the posted presentation, specifically the slide 25, which we already know it was you didn't receive. Number 3, did your research account for the legal fees incurred by cities facing community opposition. And number 4, among the cities that conducted environmental reviews, did any also assess the public health impacts? And now for council, she asked, considering Legacy High School and the Urban Orchard Project near current industrial zones, could the city explore adapting reuse ordinances or encourage economic generation or new housing? What is the most effective use of the land around these facilities? And she says, thank you. That was it.
Thank you. I'm going to close that portion. Okay, so I hope everybody paid attention so we're able to answer. A couple of points, though. ADUs, I want to get on that one right away because that's the easiest one. None of us here want to deal with ADUs. We're already overpopulated. Streets are filled with cars, not enough parking. But we take orders from the state of California. They made that policy statewide. I don't like it. I don't think any of our residents like it, but we cannot violate state law. So when we updated our municipal code, it was to be in compliance with the state requirement. As reluctant as we might be, we can't violate state law when it comes to that. A couple of things about how we got here. Yes, Anheuser-Busch brought this project forward, but let's make sure everybody understands that even any change we make here, that's not on the agenda tonight. If they decide on moving forward with a project, that's going to require the conditional use permit. So they could still be rejected. This is about something that impacts the entire city of Southgate. Let me give you a couple of examples. There's a company called KPAC. It's on Southern Avenue. And sadly, we have, well, it's a good thing. There's a project. It's the Southeast Gateways Rail. It's going to come through our city. And Metro decided to take their property. What they do at KPAC is that it's a warehouse. I think it's roughly 83,000 square feet. And it's a very unique warehouse because it offers something that's not offered by a lot of warehouses, which is something that keeps like refrigeration, cooling. And they handle items coming from the Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach. So they argued, KPAC argued with Metro, and they actually have a court case. And they're saying to Metro, we don't want to move because we just spent $27 million in making our facility environmentally friendly. Metro basically said to them, well, we're taking it anyway, but you can relocate anywhere in the city of Southgate. KPAC says to them, we can't, because anywhere we go in Southgate, we can't build an 83,000 square foot warehouse, just like the one we had, because we're limited to 15,000 square feet. IRS has a building. I know it's larger than 15,000 square feet, and they want to remodel. They want to tear it down and build a new one in the same location, but they can't because they're limited to 15,000 square feet. So that's how we got here. There's a lot of companies here in the city of Southgate that would just like to remodel, basically rebuild, but they're not allowed to because we have a 15,000 square foot limit. In preparation for this meeting, I wanted to do as much research as I could. Last Thursday, I obtained a copy of the CEQA, the 2024 CEQA, 520 pages. There's no mention about limits on warehouse size. Everything that you read is project specific. If you're building a church, you need to do this. If you're building a school, if you're building a senior complex, if you're building everything that's in there, talks about what the requirements would be based on the project, the specific project, not the size of the lot, not the size of the building, but the specific project. I also wanted to take a look at the change that was made. It was in 2015. And the 5 people involved in making that policy change were Henry Gonzalez, Bill DeWitt, Jorge Morales, Vice Mayor Maria Davila, and myself. There were 384 pages in that, and I try to read everything as my colleagues do. In 2 pages, pages 32 and 37, they mention the 15,000 square foot limit as footnotes with asterisks on it. But on page 382, it talks about the definition of a variety of things. One of the things they talk about is, what is a warehouse? A warehouse is anything over 15,000 square feet. The other is called a mini warehouse. It's anything under 15,000 square feet. I got to tell you, I really don't remember why we changed it or how that footnote got in there, but it's there. And, it's like, when I think of what we do here, it's based on the general plan. The beauty of the general plan is that it was based on a lot of input that was taken. But the best part of it is that it allows for changes as things change. We try to adapt. And some of those things are mandated by the state, and some of those things are by conversations with people that are impacted by things that are in our ordinances. So again, nobody here is trying to make a change that is going to benefit a company. So no, there is no specific project in that location, to answer the gentleman's question. I think he wanted to know whether there was a, I forget which one, what was that he mentioned about, he said that we have just warehouse. Well, we don't have any project listed for that area or any area in Southgate. It's just a policy change that impacts the entire city. What was that? Oh, yeah, casino. Not here. I understand that there's a casino being planned in a neighboring city of Cudahy, but it's not here. Not in Southgate. Okay. All right. Any questions or anything you want to add or answer any of the questions? I think there were some questions for Mr. Cosman. So, Mr. Cosman, would you mind?
I think I remember the 3.
There were 4.
Again, apologize about the fact that there wasn't something attached. I don't know how it was missing. It was in our packet. So that chart, I think, should be distributed for public review and council members' review. In reverse order, the question about public health was not necessarily considered. It was a pretty discrete assignment on our part to focus on the business side of the equation. The other question about legal, I think, implications, if I remember correctly from the email, also was not evaluated. There are good questions, but we didn't get that deep into the level of analysis. And then as to other folks besides NAIOP, we tried to, again, zero in on what other cities were doing, what the industry group that kind of resides over the industrial uses, brokers, attorneys, and focused on those relatively quick interviews. So it was not meant to be a comprehensive stakeholder outreach, but all good questions. Thank you. And Vice Mayor Davila, I mentioned you as a council member before. I want to say Vice Mayor.
But we've been demoted many a time.
No. I try to be more aware of that. No. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. City Manager, Mr. City Attorney, anything else you want to add?
I think a great discussion, great comments from the community, developers, complicated thing to get our heads around for the community and for the council. But I just wanted, one important thing is I wanted to clarify, this does deal with whether or not a cap should be on warehouses or not, but I thought if Costco or Home Depot were wondering, actually they would be allowed. They're a retail, not warehouse. So I just, in case they were listening and they wanted to move here in the next day or two, we don't want them to be scared off. So I just wanted to clarify that we'd be happy to check out their plans. But certainly anything that's defined as a warehouse, not retail, that's what this is pertaining to. Thank you.
Yeah, and just because I know Giovanna, one of the things that happens is that when a company like Costco comes in, if they say that they're retail, no problem. But if they say, oh, we're a warehouse, staff might say no to them. Right, but that's where that comment is coming from. Okay, any comments from my council colleagues? Yes, Councilmember Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I really wanted to just also provide some insight of, and ask Raul a question regarding 2015 when the cap was put on. It went through a process. Was it evaluated, that square footage, and it was determined that that was the verbiage that was going to be put on that item at the time?
Councilmember Barone, what I remember being the city attorney at the time is that, as was reflected in former Councilmember Delatorre's email, there was a tremendous concern by the then sitting council about the growth of warehouses in the city. And there was a emphasis to focus more on bringing in jobs as opposed to just traffic. And so traffic was really the impetus for limiting the size of warehousing. And that seemed to play a role there. That's more of an anecdotal response. I do recall that it took forever to do the zoning ordinance change, right? Because we went through a completely different structure. We went through these tables and hence we have this footnote of 15,000 square feet that landed up in two of the tables under the zoning code, which is really what brings us here today.
Right.
But the overall impetus, I do not recall any opposition to that sense of trying to protect the city from an overabundance of traffic.
Right.
As no opposition there at all. It was really, we had a very strong council that believed in job growth, job preservation, looking for opportunities for the residents of Southgate to have jobs here. And so there was a number of overlays involving jobs and traffic and warehousing, because warehousing was starting to rear its head at about that time.
Thank you. And Meredith, is that square footage requirement listed in our general plan or anywhere in our overall general plan for our city?
I believe it's only listed in that footnote in our municipal code.
Okay. So the reason why I bring that up is, the difference between a CEQA review and an environmental impact review is project-based, right? If it's something that's specific to a project, then a CEQA review would go ahead and review that as long as that project fell within our city ordinance. Now, if we are outside of that, if we're addressing a change citywide, I understand why we would require an environmental impact review, because now it's no longer just how can it impact a certain area, but really how that change in law will impact our city as a whole. These are questions that we need to get answered. These are items that we need to address. We need to do them quickly. I think that there is a lot of work that is going to be done to provide these answers, because in order to be fair to the businesses and in order to decide what our community impact fees are, or our fees that are going to be requested as part of a CUP, we're going to need to understand what the environmental impact is going to be on our community. There's a lot of questions that came up regarding, why are we deciding on one project or the other? Why is there storage units over retail? great questions. You know, storage units have very little community impact because they don't cause traffic. People load their things in there and probably never see them for another year. So there's no back and forth traffic going to that location. So the community impact is very minimal. But does it create jobs? No. Does it create revenue? No. It doesn't help our community. So if we want to start developing projects that will, one, help our community move forward, because the hard question will be this, and residents, I appreciate you guys being here because I want you to hear this question because it's a question me as a resident I have as well. Will I be okay asking you to pay more money in taxes because I don't want no more business coming into my city? Because we need to start developing revenue. And if we don't develop it from our business side, the only other side we can ask is our resident. You have to pay more in this. You have to pay more in this. We just increased our sewage fee by $3.50 because it was on a negative for many years. There's other fees that are already in a negative. If we do not address what our zoning law and what we want to envision the future of our community, we're going to start asking questions that our residents are not going to like to hear. So we have to weigh those options. We are up here because we have to weigh those options. We have to see the community impact and the community benefit and say, how do they align and do they make sense for us? That's our job. It's a very tough job, but we're up here to do it because that's what we signed up for. And I really hope that before we pass judgment or we make rash decisions, that we really understand that what we're asking today is not just what we want our city to look like tomorrow, but what we want our city to look like 50 years from now. And what we expect for our residents 50 years from now. And I really hope that the city is given the opportunity to do a proper review and to be able to give our business district an outline of what we would require to consider development, or how we would weigh the option of community benefit to community impact. Right now, we don't have that for them. They're coming in blind. They don't know what the fees will be. They don't know what the impact will be. So I'm asking that we really try to get this EIR done quickly, as efficiently as possible. And also, make sure that we're addressing in the EIR potential projects that are going to come so that we can lower the expectations of CEQA because we've already handled it in our EIR. And that's a great possibility. So thank you.
And before I go to my colleagues.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could just respond briefly. My partner Terry Montoya spends all his time doing CEQA-related stuff. I've asked him just to spend, not more than 3 minutes responding directly to Councilmember Barone's question about this concept of project under CEQA, because it's a little bit, nebulous. And so let's see if we can, for the benefit of the public here, also bring some clarity there. Terry.
Yeah, thank you. There's no project for discussion rising from this special meeting, of course, because it's just recommendations and things for the city to consider. But a project which would require a CEQA review would be if you wanted to make amendments to your general plan on the land use side. So, and for long-range planning, for business generation purposes, would be one thing that you would that you could amend your general plan for. That would be a project under CEQA in itself, and then consistent with that long-range plan and the new amended general plan and zoning, when businesses come in, each of those could be a discrete project under CEQA. So the next steps, to follow up on Cosmo's points, the next steps, if you desire to go further with this, in terms of coming up with a vision and adapting your land use to meet that vision, CEQA would come into play.
And then also, Rob, if you can comment on this, a current property that is over the 15,000 square foot, if they wanted to remodel their property and keep it in the same use, would they be limited to do that?
I can give you the high level and then we can pass to Meredith for the specific detail. But in general, we do have examples even on the same street where, say, 200,000 square foot buildings are side by side. One had a warehouse use from pre-2015 and it continues to have that use. So it's over 15,000, but it's been in that use, so it's grandfathered in. The building right beside it, maybe built at the same time, had a manufacturing use. And if it wanted to, that business left and they wanted to then offer it up to a warehouse use, it gets treated as a new use. And then it doesn't have that grandfather cap. But the first example, the one that's the warehouse, there are abilities for it to have that business leave and within a specific amount of time, which I'll pass to Meredith to give the specifics, it can convert to warehouse again under that grandfathered clause. But maybe Meredith, you can give the specifics on how that works, and also if there's a percentage of square footage that they can renovate without causing a problem.
So to answer your questions regarding if you have an existing building, same use, and they want to do tenant improvements or let's say renovate the exterior, yes, they can do that. The only way that that we can say no is, let's say a use is legal non-conforming and they want to expand the building. Then the developer or the property owner is only allowed a 10% addition on top of the existing use. That's our cap. So if, let's say you have a 200,000 square foot building that's currently legal non-conforming, then you can build an additional 20,000 square feet on top of that, and that's the max. However, if you have an existing, let's say, building envelope and you just want to improve it, yes, you can do that right now.
Okay, so I need to touch on these subjects. We had a couple of people left, and I like talking about this particular subject. It was brought up by a speaker. Taxes, that we pay the highest taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that is not true. No matter how many times you hear that, it doesn't make it true. The city of Southgate gets 10.25% in sales tax, like 40, 50 different cities in LA County alone. And just about every city around us has an additional tax, which is known as a utility users tax. Downey has one of the lowest ones at 4%. Some cities have it as high as 11%. That's a tax on gas, water, electricity, phone, cell phone, cable, and internet. Southgate doesn't have one. So when you get all the taxes that our residents pay and our businesses, they don't pay that additional tax. So when you get all the taxes that are collected, we are, if not the lowest, we are one of the lowest, period. Regardless of how many times you see it on social media, no matter how many times your friends and family tell you, it's just not true. It's factually incorrect. Mr. City Manager, is my statement pretty accurate there?
I would say yes. I
Then say
believe
it.
You've covered it. The mayor, do you want me to say
Yes.
we're one of the lowest tax cities, or do you want me to say the mayor is right?
Yes, both of them. Thank you so much. I enjoy both of those. The other thing I want to mention, I apologize, I bring it back to my colleagues. In every city, you need to have a little bit of a balance. When you have businesses like manufacturing jobs, for example, one problem is that they don't generate revenue for the city, but they can create good, union jobs, high paying, good benefits. On the other hand, retail brings in a lot of revenue, a lot of taxes, sales tax, but they're very low wages out there. And so we need both of them because we need the sales tax, but we also need people to earn livable wage. And you're just not going to get it if we have nothing but retail and retail and retail. And those are facts. I'm not an economist, but I've known enough about this. I've been up here long enough to know that that's a fact. I'm sorry. Councilwoman Avalos, you were next. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you to the audience that's still here and those that are on YouTube. I think this is a pretty important decision that all of the residents, as well as the business community, needs to really grapple with. We will not be here 50 years from now, all of us, probably not. But my question would be, what kind of a city do we want to leave behind for those future generations? I would have to give it to the people 50 years ago that in their wisdom and the forethought that they had, we have the city that we have today. So I don't take any decision that I make on this dais lightly. I always weigh in the community, as well as the businesses, as well as the employees, and everyone that comes through our city. I appreciate the residents that came in and the business community that came in. But in order for me to make a well-informed decision, there has to be a more in-depth study on the traffic. Why? I don't know how much longer our roads are going to be able to take it. So for me, I need to know really what are the conditions of our roadways. Because at the end of the day, if they're not going to be able to support the new warehousing, distribution centers, or any manufacturing that's coming in, then we're going to have an issue on our hands. And I have to give it to the mayor 50 years ago, who sent a letter to the new mayor and addressed it as Mr. Times have changed. It was Miss Mayor. But they had the forethought in Public Works to be able to look at Firestone Boulevard and decide back then, we need to add an additional lane because more traffic is going to be generated. So for me, I would really consider making sure that we do a traffic study, looking at the projects that are going to be coming into our city, specifically the Southeast Gateway Air Rail that is going to be impacting Atlantic and Firestone Boulevard, as well as East LA College that's coming in on the west side. So for me, I would like to see a study of the entire city to see what the condition of our roads are and what is their capacity for more traffic. The second one would be the EIR, to evaluate the entire city to see where do we have zones that we can actually change to be able to accommodate new companies that are willing to come in into Southgate. I am not about shutting the door. I am about opening the door, but being well-informed and well-educated. Because when you are only seeing one side, you are not going to make a very well-educated decision. And the last thing is the question to our city attorney. Would there be a way that we can do a referendum to let the community weigh in and really vote on what kind of city they want? Because at the end of the day, all of us are here because you put us here. The day you tell us no, okay, see you. But for me, I want to take that into consideration. What do the residents want? Because they are the ones that are generating the majority with their tax dollars every time they make those payments to the county. It is their quality of life that we are going to be impacting. So that, to me, is surmountable. Because I live here. I deal with the health issues, just like a lot of our residents do. So if you don't mind responding, I'd appreciate it.
Well, we have a history, Councilwoman, of I think once or twice in the last 20 years of actually putting an advisory ballot question on. I think it had to actually do with whether we wanted to do away with the role of an independent city clerk, as I recall, and the voters said no to that.
Mhm.
But there are, under some circumstances, we'd have to look into it, in which you can ask the city to render their opinion on topics like this. We'd have to look into that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes.
And I think, when was the last time that we went through with our general plan? Because I know it's been quite some time already.
I think it was 2008 that we
I
did
want to,
that.
I was going to say 2008.
Then say it.
2009.
Oh,
Okay, I meant 2009.
I said it last, so I was closer.
Okay, well,
Okay.
maybe there is a time that we need to revise our general plan, especially because, I mean, there has been so many changes, a lot of changes, and we need to revise it. I really do think so. And I'm going to agree with Councilwoman Avalos. I think that we need to be more informed, but get more information and understand all the information that we get, and before we decide on what is it going to be in a policy. So that's, but I really do think so that we need to revise our general plan, especially because there is a lot of new projects coming along, like the Waygate Cities line and the college. And I think back then when we were working on the general plan, all those were in mind, but at the time it was just plans. Now they're actually happening. So we need to look into that. Yeah. Yeah, I know that was one of my questions, and I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, no. you got the floor.
When talking about the square footage, what happens if a building falls down? They can build up, even if it's more than 15,000 square feet.
If it was destroyed by natural causes, let's say,
Or earthquakes that have been
That's
hitting us
right.
recently.
then yes, they may rebuild. But if they
It doesn't- it
voluntarily
doesn't-
demolish a building, then
Then
no, they
it's-
cannot.
That's an disadvantage.
So you
for
can't
them.
cause an earthquake, Richard.
What about
if
it
it's
is a
a fire?
disadvantage, right?
If it's a fire?
Uh,
Would they be able
I would need to look that up.
Okay. So those are some of the things that we need to think about and look into. Thank you.
Mr. Rios, council member.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank the residents, the developers, the business people that are here for spending some time with us reviewing this matter. It's a very important matter, and I have a lot of questions and concerns. I like the commentary so far. There's a reason why we have 15,000 square feet for warehousing. And, I think we have to keep that in mind. This is a very dense community in the area. The region is very dense and populated. It's a young population that suffers from quite a high asthma rates that should be of concern. The Planning Commission already voted it down, that we should just keep the cap. We're discussing it. I mean, at least that's what my,
Yeah, we shouldn't be talking about any particular project this evening, council
I'm not,
member.
I'm- but I know that the cap is the part of what we're talking
We're
about tonight.
talking just about the cap, yes.
The cap, they did vote it to keep it in place. And so, so we already have we have a lot of congestion on Firestone and Atlantic, Garfield and Firestone and some areas where they're failing is the F, rated F. And I go through those areas and I'm very frustrated because the time I have to spend going through those areas, access to the freeway and just the time. And so I think we have to ask those serious questions. How would removing the size, the limitation on warehouse affect the quality of life in our neighborhoods? The air quality, the noise, the traffic, the pedestrian and vehicle safety, aesthetics, the infrastructure. So those are important questions we have to ask moving forward. How would it, we have a,
Councilmember Rios, if you don't mind. And just for the audience to note, on page 5 of the presentation, it actually gives us a breakdown. We only have 3 intersections that are at a C. Everything else is D and below. And those 3 are Tweedy and Atlantic, Tweedy and Long Beach, and Firestone and Rail. So maybe that might be a miscalculation, but
these are all the questions I think that will be answered if we move ahead with a further study. I think we have to look at, are there other land uses that can be potentially your greater revenue and benefit for the city in these areas that we're talking about, these industrial areas? I think there are probably other cities looking at these areas where parks, housing, we're working in partnership with the city and other entities to kind of clean up some of these areas, or so we could reuse them in other ways too. I think we have to look at that possibility. Does the city have the water, the sewer, the roads, electricity, et cetera, infrastructure capacity to allow increasing warehousing? I think we have to ask those. Those are valid questions to ask. Would the revenues we receive from the development impacts provide enough benefit to avoid or minimize impacts to the quality of life for our residents and our small businesses? Because small businesses are going to be impacted. They're already impacted. People see delays getting into Azalea because of the traffic there in Atlanta. They'll go somewhere else. And we have already a number of trucks. I'm always seeing these trucks on Firestone going towards the freeway. I think we have to look at that. So the mom and pop stores are, some of the smaller businesses that have been here for years, they'll be impacted. Somebody have to look at it, calculate how much revenue is coming in from the warehouses, the distribution centers. That's not a big revenue this size. We know that already. We know that it's minimal. So that's not where our revenue is coming in. So the other thing is we have neighbors to the north of us, the city of Cudahy. I like to hear from our staff. I didn't get a chance to read the report, but I want to hear what they have to say. Or at least highlight some of the concerns they have with this, with just lifting the cap and how they would be impacted, because they did write us and they gave us some information. So I think we have to look at this. I would like to see if those fees those square footage that we, Cosmo, and I want to thank Cosmo because I like Larry Cosmo and all the good things they're doing. Look at, we just seen square footage, the fees. What do those translate into dollars? What does it mean? And then would that, those impacts that by bringing more traffic here, because I think that's what warehousing does, really bring more traffic, more congestion. Would that really, does it benefit the city? I think the residents, the young population, the people that are here, I think we have to ask those questions. So those are my concerns. I have great concerns that lifting the cap will create a city in the future that the aesthetics that I probably wouldn't want to live here, to tell you the truth. And I'm a resident here. I have family here. And you go on, try to get on the freeway in the morning or getting back to town, just here, it is already enough of issues. I don't know, and everybody would agree. Early morning, the afternoon, and you want to add more. Right now we have more warehousing for trucks already. J.B. Hunt wants to expand. Other companies want to expand. And I think we have to prioritize what's important. Somebody mentioned earlier, we were at the great American city. I think quality of life issues are very important. And I think even for the businesses that operate here. So those are my comments. But I do want to hear about the Cudahy.
Thank you. You know, and let me remind everybody, when Raising Cane's came into Southgate, a small little place, the traffic it was generating, maybe we should shut down all Raising Cane's. I don't eat chicken, so it wouldn't bother me. I'm vegetarian. We have Chick-fil-A, very popular. I don't eat chicken. I don't eat meat. I'm vegetarian. Should we shut them down because of the traffic they create? Starbucks. Now, stay away from that. I love my coffee. But it creates a lot of traffic. It overflows onto Firestone. Maybe we should get rid of all the Starbucks. Schools. Look at all the traffic around the schools. I think we should just do homeschooling because it generates too much traffic. My point is that the size of the building, the size of the business itself isn't, something that we should just say that's a problem because it's a large building. We don't know that a 250,000 square foot building is going to generate traffic because we don't know who's going to want to come in there. What if it's just a huge warehouse that's going to be filled up, but it's not going to generate a lot of traffic? We don't know. It might even create a lot of jobs. We don't know because we don't have a project in front of us. And I want to make sure that my colleagues understand all we're talking about here is changing something that was done back in 2015. And why are we considering it? Because of the impact it's had on the businesses. Yeah, it didn't pass on a 3-2 vote in the Planning Commission, but on a 3-2 vote, it passed to make a change, to remove that 15,000 square foot limit. And again, if we're going to look at this and say we're not going to open this up because of the impact, I got to tell you, our neighboring cities do a lot of things that we don't even know about. Downey is building this shelter right down the street from where we're at. We have no say in it. And all our residents in Hollandale are going to be negatively impacted by it. And we have no choice in that. Do we consider the impact to our neighbors at the north? Yeah, we do. But what is there to consider? There is no project that I can look at. And even if there was a project that I could look at, we then would do a conditional use permit and see what problems there are. And then assuming there's a lot of traffic issues, it's not an automatic no. What you do at that point is say, how are you going to mitigate the issue? And if it's not to our liking, we say no. But we can't even get there because we don't have a policy in place. And again, maybe we just need to, staff, maybe we can just, all of us get properly educated as to what we're actually doing here, because I think there's a little bit of confusion, and a lot of it has to do with the first time this issue came up in the Planning Commission, all they talked about was Anheuser-Busch, Anheuser-Busch. And that wasn't on the agenda. What was on the agenda is the 15,000 square foot thing. Was it brought in by Anheuser-Busch? Yeah. Yeah. But does that mean they're going to get the project? We don't know. It's not before us. All we have is this possible policy change, and all we're looking at is the various options. And again, I really am grateful that everybody came in and my colleagues are raising these questions, but I just need to make sure that everybody understands this. I've read, like I said, the 520 pages of one CEQA book. I read all 384 pages of what was presented. That was just sent to me a couple of days ago by the city manager. And, my wife says, aren't you going to sleep? I got 384 pages to go. I'm on page 200. And again, I try my very best to get us properly informed and listen to people in the community and go out to the sites, visit the sites. And when local businesses are saying, we can't operate like this, our city's not even considering our project, we don't even know what they want. I don't know what projects they want, but they can't even build it. But again, there's a lot of impacts that are being, You know, again, I mentioned the ADUs. I didn't want an ADU policy here that just opened up the doors. You know, we had to change all our municipal, and I agree with both my colleagues that maybe we need to consider doing some general plan changes. There's a gentleman in the audience that would love for us to do a Parks and Rec overhaul. We haven't done that. It's due in 2028. The general plan is due in 2035, so we're going to look at the general plan. Let's look at the park, you know, and see what improvements we can make there based on our community's needs. But in any case, all we want to do here tonight is it was just the receive and file. Is that what it is? Okay. So with that, unless there's any additional comments, I'll let, yes.
Just to clarify, I am very well aware what the issue is beforehand, so.
I'm just talking in general.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, in general.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I like the idea because it's a very complicated issues. But I think that if it eventually the council does decide to move forward, the study that comes next is expensive. That it's at least we're hearing in a range of $1 million, so that's involved, and that would mean that we would have to pay that, and it would take at least a year or some more time. So you know, so just that's what I'm hearing again, generally speaking. So just keep that in mind. That's all.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to answer Vice Mayor's question regarding
Rock on.
building, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, per our current code, it states where any non-conforming building or structure is damaged or partially destroyed by fire, explosion, or other casualty or natural disaster, structure reconstruction and use reestablishment may be permitted subject to certain things. And they can actually build up to 110% at that point. They can also, they have to comply with our Title IX, which is our building code. And then they have to build within a certain time frame that we use today. And also that they can also reestablish their non-conforming use. Thank you.
Thank you. You could think about it, Richard, but you can't do it. Yes.
If I may, just to sort of summarize some thoughts and potentially some things that we as staff could look into while there's this thought process of the next steps. But, you know, certainly I think a lot was covered here. We started on the focus of industrial land use as it pertained to warehouse use. We talked about how that could impact things positively and negatively, traffic, jobs, revenue. Started touching upon quality of life, started talking, you know, I think in general, we're talking about change. Change can be challenging. It could be important to do at certain times periodically. We talked about the general plan having now it's 15 years old. So there's some questions there about what are those next steps? Is this a narrow proposal to look into industrial use? Is it something broader that looks into general plan, that looks into the retail side, you know, restaurants, revitalizing places like Tweedy? Is it looking at housing, the metro line, all these things that are changing? If it's any of those things, what we could do as a possibility going forward is get some scope ideas with some possible quotes and some possible timelines of some of these different things, because the bigger the scope and the broader the vision and the bigger we want to swing, then the more money and the more time. And we may want to get some quotes on that. And then when we do want to bring this back, that might be helpful. So if that's something council is generally okay with, we could look at, you know, a traffic impact study. You know, what would that take? What kind of money? EIR study citywide, quote, time, and then general plan, which could be related to all that. And if you wish, we could look at that and bring some of that back at a later date.
Fair enough. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we had a tie. Pick one. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.